Good morning, Riverside, in the pews, on your couch, wherever you find yourselves watching online. It is wonderful to share this physical and virtual space together. Let's begin this sermon and continue our worship with a deep breath, centering yourself again. And another deep in and slow exhale. This morning's text takes us to the beginning. Now, it's fitting that we're at the beginning because here we are at the beginning of the school year for all the students and teachers in our midst. We're at the beginning of fall, almost, not quite. If you got a pumpkin spice latte, don't worry, you're forgiven, but technically fall's got a couple more weeks. Next Sunday is our homecoming Sunday, a beginning of so much life and activity here at Riverside. And this text we just heard from Genesis chapter 2 is the beginning of the narrative lectionary, the annual cycle of readings. We start in the beginning, but actually we didn't start in the beginning, did we? That's Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 2 is another telling of this creation story. Where Genesis 1 is a poem, Genesis 2 gives us a narrative. And this narrative in Genesis chapter 2, let's just say it's one of those texts. Sometimes you go to preach a text, you're like, oh, what am I going to preach here? Other times you go, how many sermons are in here? So let's start with the sermons I'm not preaching. We're not going to talk about what it means to be naked but not ashamed. Great sermon. Would love to talk about body positivity and how we can shed our shame. We'll save that one for another week. We're not going to talk about that pesky word helper, when the woman is the helper of the man, which is actually the Hebrew word azer, which is the same word later in the scriptures used to describe the relationship between God and humanity. So if anything, we see the woman being set to the level of divine. And we're also not going to preach the sermon about the first time we see something not good in the Bible. Good, Genesis 1. It's not good that the humans are alone. No. Today's sermon, I'm excited. Today's sermon is about, here, let me just show you. Today's sermon is about dirt. I didn't practice that, so I didn't know what was going to happen. Life is dirt. This is where Genesis chapter 2 begins. We see God the gardener, God whose hands are in the dirt. We see God forming the first humans from the dirt, which for those Hebrew readers among you, you already caught the play on words. God creates Adam out of Adamah. We think the name Adam, but it's the word Adam, out of Adamah, out of the ground, the earth. And then God forms all these creatures. We even see God watering the garden with all those rivers in this text. This beginning story has God's hands in the dirt. And so today, I want us to spend a bit of time with a few buckets of dirt, some things that I've been reflecting on about this text and dirt and what it might teach us about God and ourselves. So let's start with bucket number 1. Life is dirty. We can spend a lot of time trying to tidy up our messes, brushing things under the rug, making sure no one sees the dirt. But life is messy. Life is dirty. Yet for some reason, we have to always pretend that everything's okay. Because we see everyone else who apparently is okay, so I better pretend I'm okay too. How are you doing today? Fine is the answer we give when we don't feel like we can actually say how we're feeling. But life is dirty. There is a mess. And I'm not saying we should just make messes everywhere, although my house has a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, so messes are inevitable and unavoidable, especially when the 3-year-old's favorite show is Peppa Pig and the favorite song is Jumping Up and Down in Muddy Puddles. He also has learned how to make the muddy puddles. But we spend so much time trying to hide the mess, cover up the dirt, pretending we're okay. But the reality is, it's okay if you're not okay. It's okay if you spill some dirt on the floor, even in the nave of the Riverside church. When our youngest son, Kai, was learning to walk this past summer, we spent a week camping. He had just gotten it figured out, the whole 1 foot in front of the other, wobble, wobble, fall. And we're camping, so we're outside in the dirt. And we had a couple options. We could really focus on making sure he stayed nice and clean during this week of camping. Oh, gotta wipe your face off. You fell in the dirt again. Your hands are messy. Wash them off. No. We let this little boy roam and wander and learn to put his legs in front of the other and explore the world around him, dirt and mess and all. Sometimes we spend our energy cleaning up the messes, tidying up the dirt, and we miss out on what might be growing in its midst. This is true in our lives, and it's also true in the way we think about God and theology. We don't want it to be messy. We need all the answers to all the questions. We want to take God, put God in a box, and put a nice tall steeple on top and a bell tower on top of that. But what if we let the dirt grow something out of it? What if we would embrace the dirt rather than always sweeping it up? And what might we find growing in our lives, in our faith, and maybe even in our world? Because life is dirty. Bucket number 2. The earth doesn't belong to us. We belong to the earth. Some people like to think that this land is my land. It's for me to stake my claim and do what I want, to pillage and profit, to exploit until it all goes to hell and I jump on my spaceship and go to Mars or heaven or whichever one comes first. The earth doesn't belong to us. And this text, this narrative in Genesis highlights that perfectly. The earth doesn't belong to us, but we belong to the earth. Humans, creatures, plants, everything in this mythic narrative grows out of the dirt. Which means we should care for this good and precious earth. Love your mother. Which can be difficult when it seems at times that caring for the earth is futile. Why care for something that's going down in flames? This climate crisis, do we still have time to right the ship and miss the iceberg and fix this thing called Earth? President Obama was interviewed recently, and along the interview he was asked about a variety of things, and one, he told a story of his daughter Malia sharing that her and her friends have had a hard time holding the reality of where our world is at. All of these goals. We need to stop the climate, the temperature increase. It can't go any more than this mark. And if it goes past 2 degrees centigrade, we reach cataclysmic, inevitable results and a point of seemingly no return. And Malia, who's in her mid-20s now, by the way, was asking, what do I tell my friends? What do we do when this is the world we're living with? How do we not just throw our hands up and give it all up? And President Obama said, we might not hit the 2 centigrade goal. We probably won't. But what if we can keep it to 2.5 instead of 3 degrees centigrade? Or even 3 degrees centigrade instead of 3.5? The work we do might not solve it all, but if we can get it to 2.5 instead of 3, that could be the difference between whether or not Bangladesh is underwater and hundreds of millions of people have to relocate rather than just a few. So even if we can't fix everything in this good dirt, it's still worth doing what we can. What's good for the world? Wendell Berry, an agrarian poet and theologian, once wrote, "We have lived our lives by the assumption that what was good for us would be good for the world. We have been wrong. We must change our lives so that it will be possible to live by the contrary, that what is good for the world will be good for us. And that requires that we make the effort to know the world and learn what is good for it." This is literally our common ground. In a world that continues to have divisions in every form, whether it's conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat, big city versus small town, whatever sort of dichotomy we want to create, this becomes the common ground. I think back the anniversary that we're setting upon tomorrow on September 11th, a time that opened up so much more controversy and conflict of anyone who even looked like a Muslim was suddenly the person you were afraid of. The earth is still our common ground. This is the shared home we all have. And when you call Earth home, suddenly none of us are immigrants because we're all home already. And yes, I am thinking of the mayor of this very city who talked about, "This issue will destroy New York City," he said. This issue. What he meant was the immigrants who are coming to New York City. It's a big number. I think 110,000 is the current number. But let's put that in perspective. That's still very, very small compared to the 12 million immigrants who came through Ellis Island to make this city. And this issue is not the immigrants. This issue is the lack of housing. This issue is the lack of fair jobs. This issue is the racism and the xenophobia of anyone who might speak with an accent that we don't deem to be American. That's the issue that will destroy this city and this world. And our work is to recognize the common ground we all stand upon and the earth we call home. The earth doesn't belong to us. We belong to the earth. One last bucket. From the dirt we came, and to the dirt we will return. This text in Genesis gives us a beginning, life coming out of the dirt. And it's just a chapter later when everything begins to fall apart. And we hear that line, "From dust you came, to dust you'll return. From the earth you came, and to the earth you will return." We are all human, but one day we'll return to humus. We are all Adam, but we'll return to Adamah. This is our inevitable future. Maybe the ignorance of youth says, "I'm immortal, I'm invincible." You're still human. And this third bucket is one that I've held differently since having kids. My wife and I have 2 kids, a 3-year-old, 1.5-year-old. You heard about the 1.5-year-old who learned to walk by falling into dirt. The 3-year-old, his name is Lauren. Ever since he met him, my son's favorite person in the world is his grandpa, my dad. "Is Bubba coming today? Bubba toys, Grandpa's here. Let's go sit on the front porch and wait for Grandma and Grandpa. Can Grandpa sit next to me?" Now, usually I'm Lauren's favorite person in the world, but my dad beats me out anytime. My parents are in their mid-70s, both healthy, and we are planning on that lasting for a long time, God willing. But as my wife and I have seen our 3-year-old have such a special bond with his grandfather, who has inevitably fewer years ahead of him than behind, we've come to realize at some point in Lauren's life, we will have to be with our son as he holds the loss, the death of someone he loves. It's inevitable. It's where we're all headed. Which could make you just throw your hands up into nihilism. The earth's going to hell. We're all dying. What's the point? No. There's some good news here. Even though we will return to the earth, especially because these moments are fleeting and ephemeral and finite, that is precisely what makes them even more magical. From dirt you came, to dirt you will return, but what are you going to do in between? What will grow and come to life? What experiences and memories will a 3-year-old have with his grandfather as they see how high the balloons can go in the backyard with the kite string, as they see how many ropes they can put onto the stroller to pull it across the driveway, as he asks again and again, "Can Grandpa read me books tonight at bedtime?" "Absolutely, buddy, every time." Because we know it's finite. Each moment is even more meaningful. From dirt we came, to dirt we will return. We don't own the earth. The earth doesn't belong to us. We belong to the earth. And life, as you can see, this sermon is a little bit dirty. How many people got a little stressed out seeing this happen up here? That's your own personal sermon for today. You can work on that one at brunch. Wendell Berry has another quote I want to leave us with. He says that the soil is the great connector in our lives, the source and destination of all. It's the healer and restorer and resurrector by which disease passes into health, age into youth, death into life. Without proper care for it, we have no community, because without proper care for it, we have no life. Amen.